OBS, or the Open Broadcaster software, is an open source streaming and recording program. It allows you to live stream to services such as YouTube and Twitch. You can pre-record video, of course, and later upload it to hosting platforms like YouTube, Vimeo, what have you. Open Broadcaster software is available on Windows, Mac, and Linux. On Windows and Mac, there are other alternatives to something like Open Broadcaster software for your live streaming needs. But in Linux, really, Open Broadcaster software, OBS, is kind of the only game in town, but it is very good. It is top-notch, free and open source software. So today I'm going to discuss how you install OBS in Linux and some basic setting it up and getting started with OBS. So let's begin with how you install OBS in Linux. Now this is going to vary from distro to distro. Every distro uses its own unique package manager or software center. Typically though, I install all of my packages in the command line. It's always just the fastest and easiest way to go. I run Manjaro on my main production machine. Manjaro is an Arch-based Linux distribution. I'm going to open up a terminal. I'm going to zoom in here so you guys see the exact command I run here. And in Arch and all Arch-based distributions, including Manjaro, you can type this command to get OBS: sudo space pacman, which is the name of the Arch package manager, space dash capital S, which means install a program, space, and then the name of the program you wish to install. OBS dash studio is the name of the package. Hit enter. It's going to ask you for your root password. I don't think I typed the root password correctly on this machine. Alright, yeah. Then it's going to ask you yes or no, proceed with installation. It's asking me yes or no because I already have it installed. It's up to date. Do I want to reinstall it? No. There's no reason to reinstall it. It's already installed on my machine and working. Okay, close out that terminal. Okay, so you've installed OBS through your command line package manager or through a graphical package manager, say the Software Center in Ubuntu or Mint or Fedora or SUSE, whatever. Most of your distros are going to have some kind of graphical package manager. You just go in there, search for OBS, install the package. It should be in everybody's repos because OBS is free and open source software. So today I'm going to show you a little bit of how to set up OBS. This will be challenging because I'm using OBS to record this video. So what I'm going to do is I have OBS set up on my third monitor over here. I'm recording, but I'm going to have a second instance of OBS I'm going to open up to record OBS. I'm actually going to use OBS to capture another instance of OBS today. So this should be interesting. Alright, so when you first launch OBS, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to ask you, do you want to run through a setup wizard? A basic setup wizard. You can hit OK. You can skip it. Either way, at the end, you pretty much are going to end up with the same thing. The setup wizard is not that useful, to be honest. But anyway, what you need to do is go to the top here in the menu, File, and then Settings. And this is where you set like all the really important settings in OBS. Alright, you have your general settings. Now this, you don't really need to play with these too much. Now you do have the options of a light or a dark theme. You have a couple of different theming options. I'm using the dark theme. You may want to change the window theming. Other than that, automatically record when streaming. You could tick that on if, say, you want to do a live stream on YouTube or Twitch, but you also want to record that also to your hard drive on your computer in case, you know, for some reason the live stream recording is not good and you want to go back and, you know, have a backup copy to upload to Twitch or YouTube later. That could be useful, but really I haven't played with the general settings at all other than the dark theme. The stream settings, all you need to do here is choose your streaming service. So I don't stream on anything except YouTube. So I go to YouTube and then I need to enter my YouTube stream key. Very important. It's basically your password to be able to stream on YouTube. Twitch will have a similar key that you'd have to enter. And then you're ready to go as far as live streaming. That's all you need to do to be able to live stream on Twitch or YouTube or any of those services is have your stream key. Output is interesting here. Now, by default, output has simple mode. This is the only screen it shows for output. It shows your streaming, video bitrate, audio bitrate for live streaming, and it also does the same thing for your recording. So I do both streaming and pre-recorded shows on my YouTube channel. For video bitrate for live streaming, I'm doing 4,000. Most people recommend a bitrate for like 1920 by 1080. 4,000, 5,000, often numbers people use, or even higher depending on your machine. If you go too high, though, you're really going to have some issues. You're going to have a bottleneck with your CPU, especially maybe your GPU if you don't have a good graphics card. Also, encoder, I am using NVENC, which is the NVIDIA encoder. So basically, I'm having my graphics card, my NVIDIA GeForce 1060, doing most of the heavy lifting. You really need to use graphics card encoding. If you have an NVIDIA card, you need to use NVENC, which is hardware encoding. Otherwise, it's going to try to do software encoding, and even on a really monster machine, that typically doesn't work out well, especially on live streaming. Pre-recording, you might get by. Live streaming, you really need NVENC installed if you have an NVIDIA card. Of course, I'm on an Arch-based Linux distribution, so again, to install something in Arch, sudo pacman -S. Actually, what I'm about to install is actually in the AUR, so let me change that. The command I would use to install, well, depending on what AUR helper you're using, I won't get into that, but the package you need from the AUR is ffmpeg-nvenc-full, I believe. I'm not going to actually look that up, but you need to install the ffmpeg-nvenc package in Arch. The name of that package may vary depending on your distro, but you need to have NVENC installed, and then you should have NVENC supported as an encoder in OBS. If you don't have NVENC installed, you won't have the option to select NVENC here. The only option will be Software X264. So, gotta have NVENC installed to use NVENC, of course. Then you, in recording, you have the options of how you want to save your recordings for pre-recorded stuff. I always just pre-record to MP4, but you have the options of MOV, FLV, MKV, which is nice. I sometimes actually use MKV. I just use MP4 because it works. Actually, all of them work. I've played around with different recording formats before. All are good. Now you have the audio tab here. Audio tab, where you can choose sample rate. 44.1 and 48 seem to be pretty common for most equipment. Channels, there you have the options, usually of recording in mono, stereo, and then various other channel. Desktop audio device, this would be OBS is going to record desktop audio. That would be like your system sounds. If I opened up a music player and started playing music, that's desktop audio. Or if I played a YouTube video and you guys hear the sound from that video, that's desktop audio. You need to set that device. Mine is built-in audio, analog, stereo. It's going to vary from on your machines. Then I need to set the mic audio device. So that's what microphone are we trying to capture. It's possible you could have multiple inputs as far as a mic. I'm capturing my Scarlett 2i2 USB audio interface that the Blue Baby Bottle SL is plugged into. So this is my Blue Baby Bottle mic that's plugged into the Scarlett interface. So that's why I have Scarlett chosen here. If I plugged in a USB mic like my Blue Yeti, I would have the option of choosing Blue Yeti also in this list. So you can actually have multiple microphones plugged in to your computer, and you can switch between them if you want to use multiple mics. Right now I'm just using the one mic, the Blue Baby Bottle SL. And that is pretty much all I do. I set the desktop audio device, the mic audio device, set channel to mono for this mic because it's an XLR mic, and that is all I do with audio. Video. Now video is interesting. There's not much to do here as far as there's just a few settings, but it's important. First, you need to select the base or the canvas resolution. So what is the resolution of the screen you're recording? I'm recording one of my monitors here. That monitor has a 1920 by 1080 resolution. So that is the base resolution. So set the base resolution to what the screen resolution you're recording actually is. Then output or scaled resolution means what you want to scale that resolution down to on your recording or on the live stream. So I do 1920 by 1080 for recording too. Now, if your machine is really underpowered, or if whatever streaming platform you're trying to stream to doesn't support 1080 for some reason, then you can scale that down. If you're not doing 1080, most people are doing 1280 by 720. So 720p. But my machine does okay with 1080, especially with the graphics card I have, that NVIDIA 1060. I can do 1080 with 60 frames per second, which you can set common frames per second right here. So 60 frames per second is pretty common for 1080. You can drop it down to something like, again, if you have an underpowered machine that doesn't have a great CPU, or especially not a great GPU, you can set it down, the resolution, to 720p, maybe drop the frame rate down to 60 frames per second. Hotkeys. Now, hotkeys is something I do play around a little bit. You guys have seen my Taking Into Account series. I do a weekly podcast called Taking Into Account, and I do have some hotkeys set for that, where I can bring up different scenes or different things on screen, like news articles and stuff. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. So if I go to this scene for Taking Into Account, where do I have? And these things that I am just putting on camera right here, I actually have all of this hotkeyed to the keyboard settings, so that I can, for example, right now, I have an arrow beside each of the 5 stories that I discussed last week, but I can, with some keyboard commands, remove some of this, right? And then put it back. So that is how some of that would work. Obviously, you would also use hotkeys, or you could, it's personal preference here. You could use hotkeys to start and stop recording, or scene transitions, or whatever you want to set a hotkey to. The sky's the limit on that sort of thing. So that is File, Settings. That's where most of your settings in OBS are going to be. And we've already discussed General, Stream, Output, Audio, Video, Hotkeys. The last one is Advanced. Advanced is appropriate. You probably shouldn't mess with anything here at all. All of this is default. I haven't played with any of these settings, because unless you really know what these do, what these settings are, there's no reason to play with it. The only one offhand I could see a need for some people to play with is file name formatting. How the file names, so if I record something, it's going to be in this format right here: year for 4 digits, then the month, then the day, then the hour, then the minute, then the seconds, all separated by hyphens. If I wanted to change that file format, how files are saved and named, I could do that. But the rest of these settings I really wouldn't play with. All right, so you have OBS installed. You've got your settings worked out. If you're using an NVIDIA card, hopefully you've got the NVENC encoder set. Now you're ready to record something, either pre-record something or start live streaming, if you've got your YouTube key or your Twitch key. How do you create a scene in OBS? Like the scene you guys are watching me in right now, with my lower third, with the logo, the title of the video, the little scrolling text at the bottom. I've got background image, plus obviously I've got my camera scene here. You guys see me talking in. How do you set up something like this in OBS? Well, let me go back to recording OBS here. You guys see I have a list of scenes here, starting with intro. Let me hit the intro. It plays my intro, has some audio. All right, so how do you create something like that? Well, obviously you need to create some kind of intro video, or outsource that to a freelancer that can create a video for you, or buy a pre-made intro or outro video from a website on the internet. But to create a scene like that, what you would do is, this is going to be empty, of course, by default when you first start OBS, because you haven't created any scenes. You need to create a scene. You need to go to the plus symbol down here, click Add, then you need to name that scene. Obviously, we're going to let's do that intro scene. I already have intro as the name of my scene, so I need to choose a different name this time. How about intro intro test, just to show you guys how this works. Okay, so now we have intro as a new scene in OBS. Of course, it's still blank. It's just a black screen because this scene has no sources. We need to start adding sources to this intro test scene. So again, go to the plus symbol and add a source. The first thing we should do, if this is just an intro, we need to add a video file, an MP4 or whatever video format. So I would go to media source. The name of that media source, we'll call that intro video. And then the location of that file. You see local file, browse, and then wherever that intro is on my system. So I have a folder here called intro. Here is an older intro I used previously on the channel when I had a little bit different logo and look. And there you go. That's that scene. Now I'm going to delete that scene because I won't be using that. Let's create another scene. Let's create YouTube main. It's just a standard kind of generic YouTube kind of overlay for OBS. Again, we created a scene, named it. Now we need to add a source. First thing we need to do is add some kind of background image, right? Instead of just this black background. So I would go to image. The name of the image, let's just call it background. Then we go and find some background image we want to use or create our own in something like GIMP or Inkscape. So let's see if I can find the background images I actually use. That's not what I wanted. I think this is the one I used. So main background.ping was the name of it. And you see it's a 920 by 1080 background that I created in GIMP. This is the background you guys see all the time on my live streams and my pre-recorded shows. That is just an image I created. So, and you guys see the red border around the image. I can resize it if I want. Just grab one of the corners or the sides and resize it. Of course, I want it full screen. And once I have it set to the size and the placement I want, there's a little lock symbol next to background. You have the eye symbol where you can hide it or unhide it. And then you have the lock symbol. If I click the lock symbol, no more red border when I touch it. I can't resize it. I can't mess it up in any way. I've got that locked. We're good on the background. Now what should we add? Well, we should add a title to the video. So I'm going to go to add a source again. This time I'm going to add text. We should name the text. How about title of video? The title of this video, I'm not sure what I named it earlier. I think I named it something like Open Broadcaster. Actually, I'm not going to name it the exact same name. I'll say this is our title. And then we need to pick the font style, font size. The font that I use for my channel for the title of the videos is Yenon Kefisats. It is free and open source font, and I think I use the light version of it, and I think I use a pretty large font, maybe 72. It's a pretty big font. Yeah, this is our title, and I could put that down here. And again, I can lock it in place once I have it exactly where I want. You guys know I usually have like a lower scrolling text here. How you would do that is, once again, add a source, go to text. This will be scrolling text. And then this is some scrolling text. And to make it long enough for this example, I'm going to copy and paste it a few times. All right. A pretty long bit of text, right? Let me click OK. I'm going to move that down here. It'll be under, the title. Now, this is too long, right? This is off screen and it's not scrolling. So what I would do, scrolling text is already highlighted down here. I can right click on it, or I can click the gear icon here. Either one gets you this menu. Go to properties. This gets the screen back up. Now, what I'm going to do is, actually what I need to do is add a filter. So cancel that. What I'm going to do is right click on it and go to filters, not properties, filters. Then right click this space over here and add. And I'm going to add scroll. Scroll is the filter. This scrolls your text. Horizontal speed or vertical speed. I don't want to scroll vertically, but I do want to scroll horizontally. So I can play with the slider there, get it whatever speed I want. I want to limit the width of the scrolling text as well. So how wide do I want this? 100 pixels is not wide enough. Obviously, 600 is obviously not wide enough. Now 1920 is my screen resolution. If I had to guess, 1600 would probably be just right. It is. So that's how I would get this scrolling text at the bottom. I could change, of course, the font style. Again, go to the cog or right click on it. Go to properties and then select font. If I wanted to change fonts to just anything, Ubuntu condensed, for example, there you go. Change the font style there. And if I wanted to lock it, so I can't resize it or move it once it's in the correct place, so I never mess it up, hit the little lock symbol. And this is how we do this. Of course, usually I have a line between these. A line is, I can either do a image, in between them, or I can create like a block of solid color. You do the block of solid color would be color source. So we go to add a scene, go to color source, and then name that color source. I'm going to call it line because I'm going to do this block, as a really long, skinny line. So it's a 400 by 400, basically block of solid color. White in this case. I'm going to leave it as white. We could play with the color. We can even do some gradients with the color. You can do a lot with these color sources. For the width, I'm going to do 1600 again. For the height, I'm only going to make this, I don't know, about 10 pixels tall. That's still a little too tall. I can actually adjust that, make it 8, maybe 4. 4 pixels seems just right. And then I drag that wherever I want it. Right there. And then I could lock it in place. Now, obviously, this is not exactly the right fonts and everything. I'm just showing you guys as an example, how you can create scenes in OBS. The only thing we're missing, we have our background, which also included our logo. So you guys saw me add an image. You guys saw me add text. You saw me add a solid block of color, but in this case, in the form of a line. Of course, how do I get my face on screen? I would go to add a source again. This time I would add video capture device. Video capture device. If you have your standard webcam, like a Logitech webcam, a USB webcam, which most people are going to be using, you go to create new device and name your device. Just call it webcam for now. And then you would see your webcam in the device menu here. Your webcam is usually going to be the name of the webcam, like a Logitech 922 that I used before. It would be in this list. I'm not using a standard webcam, though. I'm using a Panasonic Lumix G7 camera, which is plugged into a Elgato Cam Link capture device. So that is why I have Cam Link listed as my device. I can't actually add this right now because the Cam Link is busy. The Cam Link is busy actually capturing video in my other instance of OBS that I'm recording. Let me show you how this works here. This is how it would look once I add that. I have my logo, the title, the scrolling text at the bottom, the line I created, and then of course I added my webcam, resized it however I wanted to. And that's it. That's what I do in OBS, and then I create other scenes that I can transition to. For example, let me close that other instance of OBS. I have a scene called desktop, and the desktop scene, all it includes is a screen capture of one of my monitors. I tell it to capture the second of my 3 monitors, and that's taking up the whole scene in OBS. And then I also add another video capture. You guys see the little small box in the bottom right hand corner. That's my webcam again. Other than that, that's the only thing to this scene. So when you guys see me do like distro reviews and such, it's a very simple scene. Now, I call that scene desktop. I add screen capture, tell it what monitor to capture, and other than that, I put the little webcam box in the corner. Pretty easy scene. I also have a scene I call browser view. If I have a web browser open, that you guys see my face next to the web browser. You guys see that all the time in the Taking Into Account series. I also have one called Chat View. If I'm doing a live stream, you guys have seen this scene where I have, DT Live at the top, and then, in the left-hand column is where the YouTube chat would appear, and you guys, your live chats end up in that column. Pretty neat scene. So we've discussed how to create scenes in OBS, but we really haven't discussed how you transition between scenes. So once again, this is what would be the main scene here in OBS. You see I created this scene called main. This is the main scene. Right under it I have a scene called desktop. If I click that, it transitions to a scene called desktop, which is just taking a screen capture of my second monitor is what this is. And then if I want to go back to the main scene, I just click on main scene. This is the standard mode in OBS, but there is a neat feature in OBS called the studio mode. You go down here to this button right here, studio mode. You click on it. Now you have two preview windows open. Two preview windows. The one on the right is the one you're actually on. This is the current scene. The one on the left is what the future scene should be if you transition. So this is the main scene. If I go down here and click desktop, now I'm still on the main scene, but you see the desktop scene is right here in the left-hand pane. If I click transition, we transition to the desktop scene. If I go down here and click Patreon, I have a scene called Patreon, which lists all my Patreon subscribers. Now this is still on the desktop scene, but if I click transition, it will fade into the Patreon scene. And by the way, the transition, you see it has fade. Now you could also do some other kinds of transitions other than just fade. You could click the settings here and actually, is it quick transitions? Yeah, you have the option of just cutting to it, fade, or stinger, where you can have a little image that comes up in between scenes. You'd have to create a custom stinger image, though I like just using fade. Fade is kind of classy. I'm going to get back out of studio mode here. All right. So we've discussed creating scenes and transitioning between scenes, but we really haven't talked about audio. If I go back here, back to OBS, you will see bottom center, you have what is called the mixer. This is our audio mixer, and this lists all your current audio sources. By default, you'll probably have two listed. You could potentially have more, depending on how many audio devices you have plugged into your computer and activated. But you have the desktop audio, so that is desktop sounds. So that's going to be anything like system sounds, system notification sounds. If I play something in a music player on my desktop, that's going to come through. If I play a YouTube video on a web browser on my desktop, all the desktop audio. That is what desktop audio is. Then you have mic auxiliary here. Now this is the microphone. In my case, this is my blue baby bottle microphone. For you, it may be another microphone. If it doesn't pick up the correct microphone, say you have multiple audio inputs and for some reason OBS has selected the wrong one, you go to the little settings cog here and go to properties. And you have device. Now in my case, the device needs to be my USB audio interface, which is a Scarlett 2i2 interface. So my device has been set correctly, but potentially I could have other devices in this list. I have a USB microphone. I have a Blue Yeti microphone. If I plugged in the USB Blue Yeti, the Blue Yeti would be one of the possibilities I could select for devices. So you potentially could have multiple microphones to choose from on your system if you've got a lot of other stuff plugged in. For me though, the blue baby bottle is all I have plugged in currently, so we're good on that. Now, you can actually do some filtering, some noise suppression, some compression to clean up the audio. You guys, I made a video yesterday discussing the purchase of my brand new blue Baby Bottle SL microphone, and I recorded that raw audio. I didn't do any filtering in OBS or Audacity or any other kind of DAW. It was just straight raw audio because I just purchased the microphone and I wanted you guys just to hear the raw audio quality. And some of you guys in that video commented, oh, you know what, the gain's a little high, there's a little bit too much noise, you know, you need to do this and that to clean up the audio. Well, that was more of a kind of unboxing, here's the microphone kind of video, so I purposely didn't clean up the audio yesterday. But normally I do filter my audio in OBS regardless of the microphone. I cleaned it up a little bit when I was using my Blue Yeti. I'm cleaning up the audio a little bit right now using the Blue Baby Bottle. Here's how you do that. So under Mixer, you go to Mic Auxiliary again. You go to the Settings cog here, and this time instead of choosing Properties, we're going to choose Filters. And I have 4 filters enabled. Now, to get these filters, you can go down here and hit the plus symbol, and you have the choice of adding a compressor, gain, noise gate, or noise suppression. You could also just right-click in this column, and then you have a little menu, add, compressor, gain, noise gate, noise suppression, either way. So, I added a compressor. What is a compressor? Basically, a compressor, it kind of normalizes some of your audio levels. For example, when you speak naturally, sometimes you get louder, sometimes you get softer. A compressor kind of equalizes things out. It brings the softer parts, the things that are maybe a little too soft, up in volume. And those unexpected loud bursts, it brings those down so you're not peaking. So that is a compressor. By default, I have the compressor enabled. I did play with the settings a little bit. So these are not the default settings. For those that want to try out my compressor settings, feel free. I haven't played with them that much. And in fact, this is, when I was playing around with OBS initially, I actually found someone online and he recommended these settings. He was using this compressor with these settings. He was also using a second compressor. You can go to add compressor and add a second compressor. He was using the second compressor kind of as a limiter. What is a limiter? A limiter is basically designed to prevent peaking. So we actually have the first compressor here with these settings, and then the second compressor, which acts more as a limiter with these settings. Again, I won't go into detail about what all of this means as far as the settings. You can actually read up on it on the OBS website, and I suggest you do. And of course, you probably are going to want to play around with these settings on your own, take test recordings, see how it works with your particular microphone and equipment. So I also added a noise suppression. Noise suppression is pretty straightforward. By default, I think the suppression level is set to minus 40 decibels. I raised it a little bit up to minus 30. I thought minus 40 was a little much for what I needed. I also have a noise gate. A noise gate is interesting because you have a closed threshold and an open threshold. The closed threshold is the decibel level at which the mic basically shuts off. The open threshold is, as the name suggests, where the mic kind of turns on. You have attack time in milliseconds, hold time in milliseconds, release time in milliseconds. I think the default levels for these were like 250 milliseconds. That was a little too long. I didn't like the audio quality with that, so I reduced the attack time and hold time and the release time for the noise gate quite a bit. So I'm using 25, 50, and 50 for that. Overall, though, I'm not sure if those are the perfect filters and especially the settings for those filters for me, but just playing around, again, this particular microphone too, I've only had this microphone like 3 days, and just playing around with the audio filters so far in OBS, I think these settings are pretty good. Those of you that have more experience in these matters, feel free to let me know anything that I may want to improve on as far as those settings, those of you that are OBS masters. So that is a very quick rundown, basically, of OBS in Linux, some of the basic settings, how to create a scene, how to filter audio in OBS. I am by no means a master when it comes to using OBS. I've only been doing YouTube for about a year and 2 months. Before that, I never used any of this software, things like OBS, Kdenlive, Audacity, all these multimedia programs in Linux, because I didn't need to by trade. It wasn't anything I ever encountered before. So I'm very much still new when it comes to using things like OBS, but I have gained a little knowledge in the last year using OBS, and I hope those of you that are brand new to OBS, thinking about starting a YouTube channel, whether pre-recorded video, or especially those of you that want to live stream on YouTube or Twitch, hopefully I helped you guys out a little bit. Hopefully this is a good starting point for you. Before I go, I'm going to switch to my Patreon scene and thank the sponsors of the show. This show was made possible by Ansem, Carlos, Chris, David, Leor, Rob, and Tony. These guys are my highest tiered patrons. Without them, this show would not be possible. The show is also brought to you by all those fine ladies and gentlemen. You see their names on the screen. Those are the supporters of the channel. If you enjoy the channel, if you enjoy the content you've been seeing on the channel, please consider supporting the channel. You will find me at DistroTube over on Patreon. Peace, guys.